So the changes for Frost Mage, let's bring them up right here. The change, or not just Frost Mage, I guess, but the changes for mages in general are shown right here, and I will possibly link the Wowhead article in the comments below. But Arcane Explosion is reduced by 8%. That's not good, because Arcane Explosion does, I think it does at least 50% of the AoE damage for Arcane, and Arcane wasn't that great in AoE, and it kind of also is hurt by the fact that you have to stand in melee. So that really does stink a little bit, but maybe the tuning was needed. I haven't played too much around with Arcane on beta, at least the past month. I've been a little bit absent from beta the past month, because I want to enjoy the game when it comes out. I don't want to overplay beta, and with the extension on the release date, I felt like I was going to do that a little bit, so I tried to ease off. Now going into Frost, splitting, these are the big changes, by the way. Frost changes are pretty massive, and these were expected to come. A lot of people from the community have been complaining about this, and not the mage community even, because mages were so good at Mythic Plus that everybody was fucking complaining about them. Anyway, splitting Ice's Ice Lance damage to secondary targets reduced to 65%, was 80%. Now, it says Ice Lance damage, right? Splitting Ice, if you didn't know, is a talent that allows you to do your damage that's done to one target with Ice Lance, Even Bolt, your Icicles, and Glacial Spike. Sorry, that's 4 things. All to an additional target that's 80% damage, right? Now, it says Ice Lance only right here, but it's actually Ice Lance and your Icicles if you look in the tooltip in-game. I haven't verified that, but that is what the tooltip says in-game. And, by the way, these changes are only live on the actual pre-patch. They're not live on beta yet, but that should happen next week, more than likely. So, overall, I think that this is a pretty shitty change. I think that this is a bad fix to the problem. I think that, if anything, they should do the Ice Lance damage, or just a general aura modifier for maybe, like, 5 to 10% to Frost. Because oh man, I'll show you the Sims in a minute, but I just don't think that this was entirely the right move, based on Frost's niche being 2-target stacked cleave. Anyway, the next nerf that they did to Frost Mages, which I believe was a little bit needed. I didn't think they went overboard with this, and I think that this is fine. I honestly do think that this is fine. 10% Ice Lance damage reduction. This is just one of those tuning changes that Blizzard makes. It's beta, reasonable. They actually buffed Freezing Rain to try to get you to I think what they're trying to do here is they're trying to get you to choose Freezing Rain. They're trying to get you to choose Freezing Rain in multi-target situations rather than sticking with Splitting Ice, right? But it's hard to say whether that'll happen or not. It's really tough. It's really tough to say. So Freezing Rain kind of gains power with more enemies, and the thing is, I believe Blizzard is uncapped AoE. So we'll see how this turns out in the Sims for multi-target, but I imagine Splitting Ice is still going to be the default pick, especially for Mythic Plus. Now, Comet Storm's damage was also increased as well, and that's kind of along the same lines. It's just like a small tuning change. Now, what I want to get into now is actually the Sims that go along with this. There was a member of the Mage community, Toe Grinder. He, I believe, wrote the most popular Fire Mage guide last patch in 8.3. He's a very good player, and he just put out some simulations, a website that I will put in the link for you to go to check out for yourself, but I will also go over it a little bit. Also, before getting into the simulations, I'd like to say a couple things. This is Hudson from the future. I recorded that yesterday on stream. Make sure to stop by and watch my stream, by the way. But they actually changed, and by they, I mean Blizzard. Blizzard actually changed the Freezing Winds legendary, right? This effect used to be a, 30-second buff that would give you Fingers of Frost every 3 seconds, and it even used to be 2 seconds at one point. But they just fixed it, and now instead of giving you a 30-second buff, it's only a buff as long as... Here, we'll start the stopwatch. It's only as long as the Frozen Orb actually lasts. So let's start this and cast Frozen Orb, and it should be about 15 seconds. And I'm just going to cancel all my Fingers of Frost procs, right? Canceling all my Fingers of Frost procs. And it should stop very soon. That might be the last tick, or maybe one more. One more, and that should be the last one. Yep, as you can see, that is the last Fingers of Frost proc right there. Now, with this in mind, and just watching some other streamers and stuff, I think that the estimations, the predictions that I made later in this video might not be like super accurate, and I don't think that Frost will be the premier spec, or I don't think that it will be the standout spec for mages at least. I think that it has the possibility to be the best spec, but I don't think at the current tuning any singular spec actually stands out. You can listen to, you know, so many different people from the community and what they have to say, but in the end, they're all very close right now. And if you ask anybody, their answer will probably differ based on the gameplay that they like to do, right? PvP, PvE, Mythic Plus, Raid, and it will kind of differ on that and the strengths. But in most aspects and in general, the mage class is quite balanced right now, at least in my opinion. Now we can get into sims. Going to these sims now, what we can see is you can see Frost, Fire, Arcane right here. You can check all of these yourself. This is the nightly build. I just checked it, so it should be updated with the nerfs. So that's what we're going to look at right here. How do these nerfs affect Frost? So previously Frost was doing about 8,000 DPS on single target with, we'll actually go to Soulbind 40, right? To see what, you know, Soulbind 40, which is like max Soulbinds, one target. This is like going to be your best damage that you're doing possibly. And Frost used to be at about 8,000 single target damage, 8k. Now we can go check out Fire and Arcane and compare that to Frost. Fire does 7,500 now. Arcane does 7,400. So, as you can see, Frost is no longer the king by like 600 damage, which is kind of a shit ton. That's like nearly 10%. That's like 8% extra damage, which is pretty big. Fire is actually a little bit better, but only marginally. So it will come down more to what niches each of these fill. And whenever you look at then their specific niches, you want to go to 3 target and kind of compare these. Right, so Frost it should by design be the 2-target cleave class because of splitting ice. Well, I'm doubtful that it will be that, right? I'm doubtful because it depends, because I hear that Destruction Warlock is undertuned, but let's go look at Havoc. What the hell am I doing? Havoc, Destro, Warlock. So, Havoc, right, allows Destro Warlocks to do a absolute shit ton of their damage to a secondary target that isn't stacked, right? Stacked cleave should always do better than spread cleave, and that is because spread cleave can do the exact same thing whenever they're stacked or spread. So that's the advantage of being a spread cleave class, is you have that versatility, whereas stacked cleave gets a bonus in stacked cleave, right, because of that. So now that they're making the damage that Havoc does very close to the damage that Splitting Ice does, I think that that's pretty bad. Now, it's not that simple, though. I'm gonna be honest, it's not that simple, and like, this is only 10 seconds. You can only, for a maximum, have this up 33% of the time, right? But there's ways to optimize this. Also, Destro Warlocks have dots, so they gain, like, you know, resource generation from having multiple enemies. So give it, albeit it's not that much, right? But they do gain extra. But I think that this kind of sets us up, changing these talents. It kind of locks us in for the expansion for the most part, to having these talents and these percentages. And I think that that sets up Frost Mage to end up, if it's not, you know, if it's not overtuned, to be in a bad spot for its niche, which should be 2-target stacked cleave. Because imagine if you're a Frost Mage and you're doing, and you know, have an equally skilled Destro Warlock, and you're doing less damage than the Destro Warlock on 2-target stacked cleave. That's pretty shitty. Now, that I don't believe that's the case right now, but I think that that could happen in the future with these nerfs. So that's why I think changing the Splitting Ice to 65% rather than nerfing just the Ice Lance damage was a bad idea. Now, I'll go a little bit further into these sims to kind of show that Frost is still quite dominant, because Frost is very dominant still, and I think will be the premier Mythic Plus spec if nothing else changes. But whenever we go to 3 target, which is supposed to be like the AoE versions of these sims, right? Frost does 14, so that's about 14,750 damage. That's what Frost does. Let's check out Fire. Fire does about what would it be? 12,500. And Arcane does about 12,000. So, Fire and Arcane are pretty similar, but Frost is still clearly an outlier. And I think that it will be very good, especially in this first season. I think Frost is still going to be the premier mage spec, and I'm very excited to play it. I think that Fire and Arcane, these sims are done like continuously for 5 minutes, right? So I think Frost is very good at sustain, but I think where Fire and Arcane might actually be able to have niches in is because there's downtime in Mythic Plus, burst specs actually gain an advantage. Burst DPS is actually more valuable than sustained DPS in a lot of situations, not all situations, but a lot of situations. And I think that that's where Arcane and Fire can thrive in. And there's actually been a lot of Fire mages playing on beta and trying out Fire recently with some of the legendaries. Also, one more thing to note before I sign off on this video is, where are we? Let's take a look at the abilities. So, for Frost single target, it's so clear and it's so sad that Venthyr is just overpowered. Venthyr is an overpowered covenant for Frost. I think that they need to nerf it a little bit because I personally don't want to have to pick Venthyr, and the reason for that is not because of the aesthetics or anything. I like the Venthyr aesthetics. It's because Venthyr is like not that good for the other ones. Like, it's very bad for Arcane, honestly. And for AoE, it's not very good either for Arcane AoE. Fire, it's alright for Fire. It's one of the better ones, for sure. But Fire, the good thing about Fire is all of the Covenants are kind of good. Like, if you see single target, all of the Covenants are within 1% of each other. Within, like, 0.5% of each other. So that's actually really awesome. But regardless, if you pick Venthyr, you're pretty much stuck to Frost and Fire. And in multi-target, Venthyr kind of falls off for Frost. It's not that great. So I kind of am leaning more towards Night Fae, because then you can play every single spec pretty well, right? Night Fae is good on, except for Frost single target. Night Fae is like pretty good. It's best for 3 target for Frost. It's very close to best for Fire 3 target. It is nearly the best for Fire 1 target. Arcane is just the best in, it's very close to being the best, but Arcane is very good, right? So the only situation, right, where Night Fae is bad for mages currently is in single target, Frost, which unfortunately is probably going to be the best choice for us for rating. So, do you want to do top parses? Do you want to get, 99% parses? Or do you want to be good in Mythic Plus, be good on ad fights, right? Like, it's a very tough decision that you're going to have to make, and I'm personally not looking forward to it, and I actually don't know what I will pick yet, and a lot of mages don't know that either. What's going to happen is it's going to come down to what the fights are like in the raid, and we're going to have to take a look at them, a big long look, and figure out what we're going to need and what we're going to have trouble progressing on possibly, and that will probably determine what I will pick. I'm leaning more towards Night Fae right now, because some of the fights have downtime where Night Fae gains an advantage in over Venthyr, even in single target. But man, is it just going to be a bummer? Is it just going to be an absolute bummer if I can't parse on single target fights because I choose Night Fae to better my raid and help with progression to do better on ad fights and stuff like that and Mythic Plus? That's gonna just break my heart, seriously. I guess I could go Venthyr for parsing weeks or something, like once we clear the raid and come back to try to parse on some fights, but it's just like that's not enough of a sample size to get like, very good parses or anything. So it's pretty sad to me, honestly. And I wish that Blizzard, people have been saying this forever, I wish Blizzard would just allow us to switch from Covenant to Covenant, or at least switch our Covenant abilities, or maybe Soulbind trees as well. But yeah, that's about all I've got this right now. So, did this on stream. So, live here. If anyone has any comments, feel free to chime in right now. And with that said, make sure to check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/hvdsxnn. And make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. Throw any comments down in the section below if you have any. Anyway, thanks for watching.